Howdy, all. Happy Monday. The conference finals are in full swing. I'm sure people in Tampa are overjoyed right now. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, and people in people in Vegas as well. But Peter, start us off with some pre-show stuff.
So yesterday, this is not the happiest thing, but it's something that's worth noting just about social media. And you talk about things and the influence people have on others in your positions. I was showing some stuff that was making the rounds from some screenshots of Facebook. And I put a tweet out and I just said, this is classless. This gentleman is a prick. And basically what he said was he took a photo of a person serving him beer at the Jets game on Game 7 and said, on 2 nights ago, I was watching PK Subban playing Game 7. Now he's serving me beer. The server happened to be black. And that's just wrong. And it's sad. And, we think we're above these things. And the only reason that you make that joke is because the person's black. You wouldn't do if they were green. You wouldn't do if they were white. You wouldn't do if they were pink. And that's the point that's so sad about this. It's been a bit of a fallout. The gentleman apparently has resigned from his job and is a bit of social media clamoring. That was never my intention. It was more my intention to call out sort of some of the stuff that you see. And so people know, don't put it out there. If you think that, fine. But if you think it in public and on social media, you're going to get called to the mat on it.
Well, I'll tell you what else it does, Peter. And I was happy to see that tweet that you did that. I thought it was actually great that you did that. And what it does is we always hear these things like, well, this happens in the States, but it never happens in Canada. Right. But it does happen in Canada too.
Yes,
it does.
Things, and it's just to point out that, yes, there's stupid people everywhere. And you definitely should not put these thoughts out on social media, or there are ramifications. That's just the way it is.
Well, and this is the thing. It's like, people in their private lives, and like with their friends and whatever, they may have whatever crass commentary they want to make. That's all fine and good. But it's, when you put it out there publicly, you're going to get a backlash from it, and maybe it speaks to who the person truly is, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe they're just trying to be humorous, but it's not humorous in this day and age, and what everything is going on. What I see is like a sort of domino effect rolling downhill from things like what's going on in Washington right now, where John McCain is, and I've never been a particularly big fan of John McCain, but John McCain is a war hero, and he's dying of brain cancer, and somebody in the current administration made a comment about him basically saying, well, his vote doesn't really matter, he's going to die, he's dying anyway, and talking about his service, and I'm like, what happened to any kind of civility? What happened to any kind of class in commentary? I make tasteless comments about people that I don't agree with, but it's never mean spirited. It's never something that, and really, I think that the decorum in the media and the decorum in politics and everything has really gone downhill in the last few years, and it sickens me. It really does.
I agree.
It's a really good point, Mike, because you would think with all the tools and abilities to communicate, we would be at our best, right?
Yes.
It should make and force us to be at our best. But what's really happened is we're just seeing more of the worst that's out there.
Yes,
and that's sort of that's the side that really kind of is bothering, I think. And when we think about it, about life and what we're dealing with, and we're supposed to find these happy places, like they're interrupted by the worst of society, and that's the downside.
It's basically appealing to the lowest common denominator, and I despise that, because all it does is lower everything. So, Ross, what was the other thing you wanted to talk about?
Back when the Kentucky Derby ran, we online and otherwise, we never really congratulated Ferenz Fire for coming in 11th. And I think, when a horse comes in 11th, you should congratulate, because yesterday, Tiger Woods came in 11th, and for all the coverage that there was for a guy who came in 11th,
it's a start, man.
No. It's not a start, Ack.
It's a start.
This is the media. This is the media whoring themselves out because an over-the-hill injured guy is still popular, and everybody puts him up on a pedestal. It really is sickening. I don't.
He's driving traffic. I mean, he's not hurting anybody.
That's fine, but you don't have to act like online. Act like there's a chance he could win this tournament.
No,
I mean, there really wasn't a great chance of him winning that tournament. He had one good round.
I have the same feeling right now about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, but at least after they get friggin' married, we won't have to hear about them ever again. With Tiger, every freaking tournament he's in, it's Tiger this, Tiger watch. It's like, shut up. I don't care.
By the way, are we going to have a royal wedding special act?
Oh, of course, definitely.
All right.
There's no question about it.
We just won't invite Mike. That's fine.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't. No, I mean, I'm me. I'm a big royal wedding person. That's definitely my MO right there.
Yeah.
Well, I see the 3 crowns in the back over there. So
of course, yeah. I know my son's sweatshirt they wore down this past weekend was just he's got a Team Sweden sweatshirt from the World Cup of Hockey, and it's just funny how many people come up to it. What is that? What does that mean? That kind of thing.
Oh, I never. Is there a band called Lettuce? Because I've never seen somebody wear a Lettuce T-shirt.
Oh, it's Lettuce. It's the taste of sadness. Come on, it's like
or the taste of Ebola.
There is a band called Lettuce, and I was just looking it up to see if that was one of their T-shirts.
Someone got me this shirt because I'm my wife is a vegetarian and I eat meat, so this is like a joke around here. So I have this.
Although, like I said, I just made a joke about the Ebola, which is bad, but I did.
Yeah. Ebola?
Well, because the romaine
E. coli.
Yeah,
E. coli.
Ebola is a little different.
There's a difference. There is a difference.
A little different.
The interesting thing about vegetarians, and I've been a vegetarian, and I've gone back, is a friend of mine said to me when I was a vegetarian, he goes, "You know what vegetarians are?" I go, "No, what?" He goes, "That's what food eats."
That's right. It's absolutely true.
I eat plenty of vegetarian things.
No, I used to be a fairly strict vegetarian, and I moved to Manitoba, and my wife and I.
That's on the slogan. Welcome to Manitoba. You're no longer going to be a vegetarian.
Well, no, we quickly realized that like eggplant parmesan just doesn't cut it in 40 below.
Right. I get that.
Bring on the chicken wings.
I used to be a vegetarian, and then I moved to Manitoba.
Yeah,
I love that. That's a good book title for Peter's memoir.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I have nothing against vegetarians. I live with 2.5 of them. My daughter doesn't eat any meat either.
Wait. How can you be half a vegetarian?
My son eats meat rarely. I think just to make me happy, just because he feels bad about it.
Yeah, actually, we should bring up, like in the chat room, Thomas mentioned it, and I did just mention it. It was just breaking news that Margot Kidder passed away, and I'm sure you all saw the original Supermans, and so she was 69, and
she lived a tough life after.
The last 10, 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she was homeless for a while too. I remember, but yeah, and I have to say, I think that was the best of the Superman movies. Was the Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner?
No, they probably were. I mean, you'd like to think that the ones being done today are better, but when you really go back and think about it, they're not.
Not that one. Not Superman for sure.
No, not Superman.
I mean, it jumped the shark when Richard Pryor was in it.
Although we can make the argument we all bitched and moaned that Michael Keaton as Batman was like the biggest joke in the world. And 25 years later, whatever it is, 30 years later, he's probably the best of the Batman.
No, I'd give you an argument that I think he was great, and I've always liked Michael Keaton and everything, but I think Christian Bale is the best Batman.
I mean, Bale was good, but I think
those stories are just way better. That's the thing. Like the stories of Batman, those ones go to the essence of sort of the dark side of what Batman was and his torment. They never explored that in the comic book ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Albeit Jack Nicholson as the Joker is still awesome.
No, he was great. He was great. I thought Keaton was amazing as Batman. I totally with you. I always thought he was. I mean, and it's so funny because that was so far before the whole Marvel thing. Like it was so many years.
It was campy. It was Tim Burton campy, and that's the problem I have with it now after seeing the Dark Knight series and seeing how like realistic and gritty it was. But I have to say, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman.
There you go. I don't know.
I still follow Julie Newmar on Twitter. I mean, whatever.
Did we all see the new Avengers movie?
Yeah.
No, not yet. I think I'm going to see it Saturday.
Yeah, we don't. I'm not going to talk about it. I was probably you probably. It's hard to avoid it, but I'm not.
It's hard to avoid it now, but I won't say.
It said that they killed Iron Man.
No.
Just stop.
You can't say anything. We don't know. Actually, the one thing you'll know at the end of this, you'll have no idea what they did.
Yeah, because it's really setting up for the next one. So there's a lot of
It's like it definitely it ends halfway in the middle. You really won't know who they killed or what they. And it's so funny that way to me. But it's I don't know. The kids hated it. Hated it.
Really?
Really?
They hated it. And my kids. I mean, we were at Cornell that weekend and we came out. We drove out. We drove like I don't know. 45 minutes probably to get because they wanted to see it that night that it came out and everything like that.
Yeah.
They watch it all. They watch every Marvel movie all the time and they hated it. I mean, absolutely hated it. And I think that's unfair because it was pretty good. But I just they as from a kid's perspective, they just did not like it.
You know what?
Talk about the Marvel ones, right? Marvel movies. You made reference to the Batman ones.
Yeah.
You know what are the Batman equivalents in the Marvel movies? The two Fantastic Fours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, a friend of mine he's a friend, he lives next door to my mom, but he's a friend. He was one of the producers and the first director on those movies. His daughter's in the wedding scene.
Okay.
And they were shot in and around Vancouver with other studio effects and stuff. And this is kind of neat. So my nephew had a huge crush on Jessica Alba. So my mom was coming out to visit.
Who doesn't?
And so she came out to visit for Christmas. And so she comes over to where at my in-laws for Christmas morning and she goes, "Oh, I have something here for you, Eddie." And she pulls out this envelope and hands it to him, and it's an autographed picture from Jessica Alba to him. And I've never seen a kid, I guess he was 13 at the time or whatever, was just go bonkers. It was pretty neat.
That is awesome. I like the Fantastic Four movies.
Oh, you know what? I don't feel so good.
Why?
No, I'm gonna leave it there. People know why. I know why.
No. Yeah.
Stop.
It won't. It's a great. I mean, actually, the great thing about this movie is not the ending. It's the great way about the movie is how they did blend these different characters together. They did an incredible job at that.
They did. There was like 14 characters, and you wouldn't even know.
There are some amazing scenes mixing them, and they're just like, the stuff between and this is not a spoiler at all, but the stuff between what's his name, Star-Lord, who's Chris Pratt, and Thor. Is just awesome.
Fantastic.
When those two are interacting together, it's just off the charts.
Yeah,
you would never.
Wrestler Dave Bautista actually stole a couple of scenes and ad-libbed. Who knew he could ad-lib?
Yeah. I mean, and it really does. It does open up some huge moral questions. I mean, the protagonist, who's the protagonist, who's the antagonist in this thing? It's really there's some great stuff in it, but it is too deep for children. I'll say that it is too deep for children.
Too deep for children. I agree.
Like and Marvel is, of course, appealing to adults and like us who grew up with comic books.
Listen, when you're getting charged like $38 for 3D, it's not for kids anymore.
But superheroes are, so it's like you take your kids to see Superman.
So I have an issue with 3D movies.
Okay.
And I find that you lose some of the visual acuity because the glasses aren't as great. Yeah. And you almost need to go buy really good 3D movie glasses. But the problem is when things come in and out and they get close and stuff, if you have if you have to wear glasses and things,
thank you,
it throws it on.
Okay, that I can see.
And that's the reason. I only use them for reading and stuff, but even I noticed that my eyes can't adjust fast enough.
Yeah.
Peter, what they need to do for 4 eyes like us is they need to have the clip-on 3D glass that goes.
That's a good idea. That is a very good idea.
That's actually brilliant.
Yeah.
I tell you about this. Like I saw it in 3D, and I don't remember anything about it being 3D. Like I don't remember anything. I don't even remember slightly. I know I wore glasses.
Oh, there were some scenes, Zach. You definitely.
I probably just didn't put it. I mean, to me, like 3D.
There's just a lot going on. That's the problem.
I would rather be in a big. I'd rather be close to a big. Like I was in a movie that had like relatively a small screen for a movie theater. I mean, big, but relatively small. I'd rather be in a movie theater with a gigantic screen in 2D than a small screen in 3D.
I'll take the 3D. I will say this. If you want to see a spectacular 3D movie, Thor Ragnarok. That's true. I saw that.
I just find with action movies like that, the 3D gets lost because the cuts and the pace of the movie are so fast.
Yeah.
It doesn't. There's things that it catches you once in a while, and it's really cool.
Okay, but
I find you need more of a nuanced type thing for it, as opposed to the thunderous stuff of superhero movies.
And a movie that, and since I worked in a movie theater for 10 years and was a projectionist, I know all the little ins and outs and things of, because I used to take care of the projectors and do the lenses and things of that nature. And like a movie like Gravity, the one with Sandra Bullock, where you basically have a blank field that's in outer space, and then certain things like asteroids and things come out of nowhere. That movie is perfect for 3D, and you could almost feel those things coming right at you. I saw Titanic, the 100th anniversary. Then did the anniversary. I think it was the 25th anniversary of the movie in 2012. It was the 100th anniversary of the actual sinking. Talk about a movie that didn't translate to 3D. It's like, okay, what's the only the scene with Kate Winslet sitting on the couch? That was nice in 3D, but other than that, I didn't understand why they were making it. Was just a promotional gimmick.
3D then was sort of in its infancy compared to 3D now. The Star Wars movie, actually may have been the best movie for 3D because it wasn't too fast, and the images that were in front of you were incredible.
Yeah, I think that's probably. I thought the best 3D movie ever was Avatar. Avatar was phenomenal.
Yeah, I never saw Avatar, so I can't disagree.
Avatar in the movie theater, the 3D of Avatar was unbelievable. Like it because so much of it was just fantasy type.
I think there's a fair point to it being too fast, and also if you have glasses, I had never thought about that.
Yeah, it is annoying. I always lose somehow I lost my 3D glasses like right away. You know, when I get inside that kind of thing. It's like how do I do that? I'll lose anything. That just proves it. Anyway, let's move on to this show, shall we?
Yes.
It's Monday, May 14th. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, May 14th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tessier in Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund. And you're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we are here. The weekend is over. It's a magic weekend for teams if your city starts with a W, basically. The W's got the W's, as we would say. Yep. And I would first start off with how right I was about Washington.
Oh, shut up, please.
Actually, I picked Washington too, so we were both right.
Did you?
Yes.
I thought you picked Tampa.
I thought you picked it.
No.
Okay.
I picked Washington. Remember,
I may have misrepresented Russ's vote. I thought
you did. You told me Russ.
I apologize.
Washington in the other show too, Mike. I've been picking Washington.
So I'm the only sucker who picked Tampa, but I'm telling you right now, Tampa is still the better team.
They're the better team on paper. See, this is the argument, and this is how you know that I picked Washington, because when I saw Washington beat Pittsburgh, I saw something I never saw before in the way the team is, the way Ovechkin is, the way Holtby is. I wasn't betting against that. And the blend of size and speed is killing the smaller Tampa forwards, because Tampa 5-on-5 is getting destroyed. They have almost only power play goals. I don't even know if they have more than one even strength goal so far.
Right.
I think it's one.
Right.
And the other thing is, and Nikita Kucherov has been horrible since the Devils series. He piled up all his points on the Devils series. He's had 3 points in this series. He's a minus in the playoffs. He hasn't had a goal in 7 games. I got to tell you right now, Ek, if he were negotiating with me right now, I would shorten the terms on that contract, because everybody looks to Stamkos. He gets all the pressure and all the praise, and Kucherov gets to slide by. They will not win without him scoring. He's got to score goals. I am paying that guy to score goals on his next contract.
Well, I mean, yesterday's game illustrated the problem so far, and I always fixate on goaltenders, and when we were talking about this last week, and I think it was when we had Kevin on the show, we were talking, and Russ was mentioning Holtby and how Holtby could potentially come up big based on how he played against Pittsburgh. And Holtby really hasn't had to come up big in this series so far. I mean, he's made a few saves, but he really hasn't had to stand on his head. The problem is that Tampa is being undercut by their bad goaltending. Vasilevsky has been terrible, and in two instances in Game 1 and Game 2, he gives up a goal. I mean, that turning point where Kucherov scored, and they called the too many men on the ice penalty, and then I think it was like 6 seconds left to go, and Ovechkin scores off the faceoff, and then yesterday they get the goal to make it 3-2, and they have a power play and win the faceoff and score with like 1 second. Those are killers, and I mean those both of those goals were directly responsible to Vasilevsky, and he's killing them right now.
But so is their bottom three. Braden Coburn is awful. He is the worst defenseman on the ice right now.
He has been. He's been really inconsistent. And yeah, I think in general, I mean, I think defensively, I feel like there's no back checking at all from Tampa in a lot of situations. I mean, they're I mean, maybe it's because they've been chasing the game a lot and they're trying to catch up, but there's no back checking at all. They really aren't doing anything.
I almost get the feeling that they underestimated Washington, thinking that Backstrom was out of the lineup, and not that it would be a piece of cake, but that Washington was going to have to play that sort of strap down defensive style, close to the vest, 1-0, 2-1 game that they did against Pittsburgh. And the way Tampa has played, they've allowed Washington to generate more offense. I mean, Devontae Smith-Pelly, is scoring goals. I mean, he shouldn't be. He's a third, fourth line guy, but they're getting production out of players other than ones named Ovechkin and Kuznetsov, and that's the key to them winning. If they get production from second and third line guys, it's going to be tough to stop them, especially when your goaltender's not playing well and you're not getting a ton of offense.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tough to stop them now as it is. I mean, it's once you've won 2 games in the other team's building, I mean, it's really rare.
Oh, that worked for Columbus.
I know, but those were close games. This has been. Right. I mean, those were both overtime games, so there's a different world. I mean, what are your thoughts on the series, Peter?
I think the challenge that Tampa is just facing is that the Capitals literally are playing like the weight of the world has come off their shoulders, and they're loose. They're just out there like everything to them now is gravy, and you can see it in how they're playing. Now, I mean, that's a simple way of saying it. They're doing a lot of things well, but they're not tightening the clutch and the sticks tight anymore. Yeah. They're flowing, and they're doing it without Backstrom too. Yeah. I mean, this is something special to watch, really, and I'm actually really happy for Capitals fans, in particular Ovechkin, because
what it is, Peter. Yeah. Ek and I mentioned it last show. Ek did it before me, but I was thinking it, just so people know. When when Kuznetsov got added to the top line, that was massive, but it was also in part because Verana was playing so well that it allowed Trotz to make that move. And both of those things have been massive for the Capitals. Really, the other thing is, if Anton Stroman's that hurt, that he's going to be a -3 every game, then put Slater Cuckoo in. This is John Cooper's own fault for, again, going with his guys. Now, he did call out his guys yesterday for the bad 5-on-5 play. But you know what? And look, there's not much else he can do as a coach, but he could change up the defense.
But calling them playing uninspired.
I know. Well, it's his only thing, Peter. When you're this bad 5-on-5, what else can you do? But it should change around the defense.
Now it's on you when things aren't working. And just because a team's bad at 5-on-5, you got to also give credit to the opposition.
But it's not just they're a little bad 5-on-5. This is historic bad.
So, so Paul Maurice, who made a really interesting comment last week, and he said, the difference in the playoffs and the regular season is that you don't really grind guys down. You work with them. You're keeping spirits up. You're trying to keep everyone moving along in the right place. You don't want to get in their kitchen about stuff that much. And he goes, it's a different approach to how you manage games and players and attitudes and the highs and lows. And I thought that was really interesting when I think to what Cooper was just saying. And when you've got to go publicly after 2 games, into a series,
right,
and bring that out, are you out of tools in the toolbox? I asked that as a question. I don't know what the answer is.
Peter, the stat is if you lose your first 2 games at home in a conference final, the team that wins those first 2 games is 39-2. He saw that stat, and he that was the only thing he could do at that point.
Yeah, but the only problem is, Russ, that if he does sit Strawman, it probably won't be Cuckoo. It'll probably be Schuster, and that's what.
But again, it shouldn't be. It should be a more mobile defenseman. Their defense.
I agree.
The thing with Washington is you don't want to necessarily try to shut down what they're doing. You want to contain it so it's a managed offense. Right. And if Kutu gives them a better chance of that, that's all you need out of it.
You're right.
Well, I said before the series started that there was 2 ways it could go in terms of Washington. One, either they slayed the dragon that they've been trying to beat for years in Pittsburgh, and they would be, they'd be satiated, they'd be satisfied with that victory, and they would just not lay down and not try, but their motivation would be gone. It seems to be going the other way, which I described as the Boston Red Sox effect. They beat the Yankees in 2004, and then they destroyed the Cardinals in the World Series because all the weight was off their shoulders. So right now, as is, that's the way they're playing. But I think, Russ, you said Kuznetsov made some comments about how they've played at home.
Post game, Kuznetsov was interviewed, in the national interview, and basically said, paraphrasing, "I wish we could play this well at home for our fans."
Yeah,
because
they're 3-3 at home, and that's
so bad that like their best games have been on the road, and so that is the only hope for Tampa. And Tampa could win one in Washington. There's no question about it, but I don't think they're going to win both. And I think right now Cooper does need to change up things, but players do need to play. And Kucherov is one of them. Even Ryan McDonough is a -3. That's not going to cut it. Like if your top guys aren't going to do it, they're in deep trouble. And next year they are going to have a problem because, again, the teams like the Winnipegs and the teams like the Capitals right now, when you're big and fast, when you have that small lineup, you're susceptible. The only way you could beat it is by being faster. And if they're not faster and the other teams are catching up speed-wise and they're bigger, then you've got a problem.
How much do you think John Cooper is wishing he had Ben Bishop as a option? Because right now, if he had Ben Bishop as his backup with Vasilevsky starting, he'd be going to Bishop.
Yeah, he probably would, but I don't think that's the entire thing. I mean, I think
it's a big part of it. I really do.
I think he gave up a bad goal in that game. I don't think he was the reason in the first game. I do think Holtby was tested well in the first game, not tested very well in the second game. But again, we're seeing Alex Ovechkin play like right now, this moment, the last 4 games, like the best player in the playoffs. And we've never seen that before. And that's something that most teams can't contain. Let's face it. If he's hot like that, there's not much you can do.
I don't know. I agree with you, but I'm going to transition in saying that I think the best player in the playoffs right now is Dustin Byfuglien.
He could be. He could be.
I think he's just hit the. And let's move over to the Winnipeg series because obviously game one, and and Byfuglien just comes out, and Byfuglien has scored goals just back-breaking goals against teams like in Nashville in this game, in the first game. What were your thoughts? What were your thoughts seeing this one, Peter? What do you think?
Well, I'll go back to the comment Patrick Laine made about Marc-Andre Fleury not being tested this in the playoffs yet, and James Neal coming out. Well, go ahead and test him. Well, the first goal was a wonderful play by Scheifele to see the Byfuglien was there, and he sort of froze Fleury, and Byfuglien had a chance to come in around. He could have gone a couple different routes, but he just hammered one because he saw Fleury was kind of caught.
Yeah, and
boom, it's in the back of net. Well, test one, fail. Second goal, that was the Laine power play. That one, I mean, again, what makes that play happen was the read Blake Wheeler did, because he had an option to go back up high to the point, but he brought the puck down, and at that point, Laine saw him, everyone close in on him, and he moved in with the stick up, and Wheeler just and boom. Okay, well, power play goal, test 2, fail. And then the controversial goal, the one that I think probably should have been goalie interference.
Yes, I agree.
Based on, and I said, and people were saying, no. And I said, based on what the NHL has called in the postseason and all season long.
They did a change of pace on that one. You're right.
It didn't make sense to me. But, I mean, I can't fault Fleury for that. But he didn't play the puck when it was coming across, and he wasn't interfered with to play it to that point. Right. He was interfered with. He couldn't get back to stop it is what the problem was.
Right.
And
he jammed them at the beginning.
Yeah.
They caught Vegas on their heels. They caught Fleury on his heels. Then when they sort of, recouped, it was a different game. And maybe that's what we're going to see tonight. For whatever reason, Vegas wasn't ready for Winnipeg.
Here's what I saw, Russ. One of the things that Vegas does really well, and is their bread and butter, is the way they go from puck acquisition or puck possession to transition game is as fast as any team in the league. And it's incredible. What Winnipeg did was they didn't give them space to transition. They took away that space. They played their own game against them.
Yeah.
So when Vegas wanted to wind up in the neutral zone,
Yeah.
the Jets already had a guy going back, and they wanted to regroup in their own zone. They had players in there taking away the space. So what they normally wanted to do to break out, it just wasn't there. And it's exactly what Vegas has done to so many teams this season. Absolutely frustrated the hell out of them, and they got a big helping of their own medicine. Now, can that happen 2 games in a row? I'm not sure.
Winnipeg had 2. Go ahead, Russ. Go ahead.
I was going to say there was some hypocrisy there in the game also, because Ryan Reeves, that he shouldn't have been penalized. They were penalizing him on reputation, not on the actual play. That was really bad. That was almost embarrassing that he was, and he tried to sort of keep his cool in the locker room after the game, which I give him credit for. You know, I shouldn't be the guy that actually trumpets Ryan Reeves, because I've certainly ripped teams for carrying him, but they are going to need Ryan Reeves to sort of hit back at Byfuglien. Look, the one thing about Byfuglien is when he plays like this, he is unstoppable. But the problem with Byfuglien is he never plays like this for more than a few games in a row.
Right.
Well, he's now into his 3rd series playing.
Yeah, in the playoffs, he's been like this all the time. And when he was in the
playoffs, this is the most
so thanks for the jinx, Russ.
No, it's true.
Byfuglien's been a great playoff player his whole career. In Chicago, he was a great playoff player too.
It's a good soundbite to say that Marc-Andre Fleury hasn't been tested, but really it's ludicrous because he has.
That's crazy.
He was tested in the LA series a ton.
Of course he was. Yeah.
Right. But that being said, I mean, I think what you were saying, Peter, Winnipeg effectively they were basically using 2 forecheckers, and they had them planted like at the top of the face-off circles in the defensive zone, which is where Vegas does their transition, and that's what starts everything. And so if you can continue to do that, plus they were all over them. I mean, they were in the defensive zone. There was never any time for anybody to really set up anything early in that game. Maybe later on it sort of settled down a bit, but if they keep up that pace and can keep up with the pace that Vegas maintains, then I think Winnipeg probably wins the series. But nobody's been able to keep up that pace.
Here's the difference, I think, with Vegas and other teams. And this is what happens the further you get and the better the competition plays. And I think it'd be similar if it was Nashville playing in this series and not the Jets. You go down the lines, there's speed to go keep up with Vegas. Vegas is kind of a 2.5 line team.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good. But when you've got to dress Ryan Reeves because you don't have size, the Jets are a bigger and as fast team, and you want Reeves out there to cause disruption, you've now taken a valuable skill spot that you could put a host of guys in, and you're putting in Ryan Reeves, who's chasing Byfuglien. Byfuglien doesn't take that bait. Like he just won't. He's smiling
he almost
at him.
did last game. He got very close to it. Actually.
He got close, but he was smiling. Like he you know what? And Maurice will talk to Buff, and Wheeler will talk to him, and they'll get a game plan going. But if all Reeves is going to try and do is get Byfuglien off the ice, you're not playing hockey. You're worrying about the wrong thing, and the Jets are too deep to do that.
Carrier was hurt, so I mean that's the reason why Reeves was in there. So I don't think he was implanted in that lineup to be a professional disturber. I think there was a legitimate injury with Carrier, who's been a fairly important player for them as a bottom 6 guy. But they like I know it was a game in Game 6 against San Jose. They used Reeves like more than he's ever been used in St. Louis or in Pittsburgh. I mean, I think 10, 11 minutes, which for him is a lot. So, I think that if you get anything out of him in terms of him getting underneath Byfuglien's skin, it's best case scenario.
Did anybody get a sense, like I did, that like the Jets layoff really affected them too? Like I think that I really felt like the fact that the Vegas layoff affected them, because I honestly felt like when you're just 2 nights before that going toe to toe in a Game 7 against the Predators, the Jets were still in amped up mode, and they were still going off the emotions out. And I felt like Vegas had a little too much time to like start believing their press clippings, and just sitting around and not really. And they did the first period of that game was definitely, it got better as it went along, and Vegas started to like realize, okay, we're still Vegas, everything's gone so right for them. I felt like they just haven't had to really deal with adversity yet, and this is something that they're gonna have to fight through.
Here's something, guys, because Vegas is an expansion team, their list of black aces is really weak, right? It's weaker than any other team in the league. But Gallant still has a guy like Cody Glass, which again, if you look at the Winnipeg Jets, one of the big changes for them was when Kyle Connor got more ice time, eventually getting to the top line. I don't know if they stay with that, but that's made a huge difference. He has 8 points. He's a rookie. Cody Glass has size. He's 6'2". They might want to throw Cody Glass in there for some shifts because at the end of the day, I'll take Carrier out. I'll put Cody Glass in and see if I can generate a little bit more offense too, because that's a really skilled guy with size.
You know what would be interesting in this situation, Rasa, and I think, and he's a Winnipeg kid like Cody Glass, but if they hadn't traded Brendan Leipzig at the deadline, right? I mean, there's a guy who could come in.
He'd be playing. There's no question.
Speed burn. Absolute speed burn.
And they do it, Brandon. Look, they do it, Brandon Peary, which again, if you want to throw him in to bolster the power play, I'm not against that because he is a power play specialist, but Gallant is very stubborn. He won't make any changes.
How about putting in Tatar? I mean, the guy, unless he's hurt, what the hell's going on with the guy?
We don't know.
But
that's a good point.
One thing, Peter, and you probably have more information on this than either any of us do. I think it was in the second period, Enstrom got wasted by James Neal, and then he went off, and I don't know if he ever came back. I mean, he did come back. Was he okay, or have you heard anything?
Yeah, he was fine. He finished the game, so obviously they took concussion protocol, and he is expected to play.
Okay, because he got cartwheeled.
Given that hit,
I know he got leveled.
That was a real serious hit. Clean hit.
It was
very serious hit.
I mean, I can't. It's really funny. I mean, it's been a big win, and there's been more controversy and talk in Winnipeg about their street party problem that they're having with issuing tickets to it now that are free and people scalping them. Then people are really interested in sort of dissecting the game. And I think given the way that game went, there's sort of a cautious optimism, but there's been a lot of national hockey media that's come on the radio here and on the airwaves who have said, this is probably the end of the line for Vegas. And I don't know how you draw that conclusion so quickly.
After one game, I can't draw there.
I can't go there. And
they've been waiting for the reality check for 2 rounds, Peter. That's what it is. And
I made my pick on Saturday, so it was after the show, and I was just, I really well, yeah, I was really obviously none of you read it. But I was it's fine. It's not important. But anyway, no, and I went back and forth on a lot of different things to try and watch the games that these teams played in the regular season and really thought about it. And I ended up with Winnipeg in 5, and I felt like really bad throwing that out there because I'm like I just felt as if this was a team that Winnipeg matched up really well against. I felt like this was a Nashville type team that had 2 lines and not 4 lines, like you were saying, Peter. Like it's like not quite there, and I also felt like they had just done the Jets just. The difference between the Jets and everybody that they've faced, that Vegas has faced so far. Vegas faces LA, an older team that has won before, and people have sort of expectations. Then they played San Jose, who had a great season, great defense. Also has been to a Stanley Cup final recently. Now they're playing another team of destiny. So this is like a team of destinies colliding right here, right? So you have another team that really has that. Winnipeg's they had a great regular season, second overall, but have gotten better each round of the playoffs. And also the big thing that I go back to with them all the time is the sharpshooting thing. Like when you play a goalie like Marc-Andre Fleury, it's crashing the net is not what he's very good within 5 feet of him. Marc-Andre Fleury, you're not going to score close on him. Crash the net's not going to help you very often. But if you have good shooters who have hard, powerful shots that can find spots, you can beat Fleury. And then that's what you're seeing. That's what you saw in game 1.
When you have Patrick Laine shooting a one-timer from the face-off dot,
that's the Ovechkin Stamkos shot, right? And that's like they both. No one's going to miss that, right? But he hasn't scored that goal in the playoffs, really, has he? I mean,
he hasn't been open to score that goal. That's the problem.
He had one like that against Minnesota, and I think he had one similar against Nashville. But to your point, Ek, I mean, it's a really good point because if you're not worrying about Laine. Yeah. Now you're worrying about Scheifele, who's leading the playoffs in goals. He set an NHL record with 7 goals in a playoff series. And he's absolutely on fire. And if you're not worrying about Scheifele, you've now got Stasny who seems to want to score. And if you're not worrying about Stasny,
he's a great playoff player. Yeah.
Connor, who had a couple goals in the Nashville series, was relatively quiet. But you know who has 0 goals? Nick Ehlers.
Right.
Like, is he going to come unlocked?
Yeah, I mean, and he's had chances. He's had plays.
Chances, yeah.
And, you know, and but I think at the end of the day, the forwards for Vegas have no idea what to do with Bufflin. Like that, and that's
Myers has played great too. The size is causing a problem for the Vegas forwards. There's no question.
I mean, they just don't. I mean, they don't. They're not covering their point men well at all. Like the forward should cover the point guy. Not happening. It's just not happening.
You know why they're not covering the point men well. Would you want to get in front of Dustin Bufflin's shot?
No, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
That's why.
No, I know. At one point, Bufflin had somebody. There was a real classic Dustin Bufflin moment in this game where he had a guy down.
You got to remember that.
And a guy down on the ground behind the net. Bufflin has his stick turned around and is shoving his butt end down into this.
Yeah.
Like, how is that not got called?
Yeah.
There are certain things that were just kind of baffling to me, but at the same time, it's just what he is. And now, I felt like on the goal that didn't count, that they should have been goalie interference. Did anybody else get this sense of like the NHL feels like they've been so nice to Vegas in so many situations that they had to not be nice to him?
I don't feel like they've been nice, but it's. I understand why people get those thoughts because those things are so weirdly inconsistent.
Right.
And it's time for you to get your turn of the shaft, right? You know what I mean?
Right. And at this point, it's 2-0, whatever it was. I think it was 2-0. What was it? 2-1, maybe.
Well, I can only say this. I've heard this from a couple Sabre fan friends of mine. I've heard it from a couple Leaf fan friends of mine who the one team they want to see lose is Vegas because the Sabres haven't won in 48 years. No. And the Leafs haven't won a cup since '67, and this team comes in as the expansion team, and they win the first year. It pisses them off. But
it's so honestly, funny everybody wants Vegas to win, except for people in Winnipeg and bitter fans of other teams. Like but everybody else, all regular. If you do a survey,
there's some Flutter fans in Philadelphia who don't want them to win since they've won since 1975.
Something else too. Vegas really doesn't really get much in the way of criticism either, because everybody's like, well, they're playing with house money and this is great. But here's some real criticism. James Neal, if he really wants this next contract, he is only 30 years old. He's got 1 goal in his last 4 games. He's got 3 points in his last 6. He's been a -2. I mean, like, James Neal needs to play better. James Neal needs to be one of the leaders, if not the biggest leader on this team. He's been there. He's been in the playoffs. He should be a guy they can count on. He's been completely neutralized lately, which is a positive for Winnipeg. I mean, in their win against the Sharks, he had a goal, but he really, he's cooled off a lot, and they need a lot more out of him. They do.
Yeah, this is it's going to be. It was interesting to see also. The other thing I think that wasn't made enough of is that this was the first time Vegas started a series on the road, and I think that also does play into it because that building is so powerful in Las Vegas. Everybody I've talked to has been there say it's so loud.
I think we bounce back to it. I do. I think this is going to be a long series. By the way, I heard Damien Cox say on the afternoon show that he doesn't think there's even been a good series yet. So I wish they would just take him off the air because at that point, it's like. I just want to throw this out there. I know I shouldn't repeat what Damien Cox says because we all seem to have the same opinion, but I just want to say this. A series doesn't have to go 7 games to be a great series.
No.
Go 6 and be a great series. The Washington-Pittsburgh series was a pretty great series.
Yeah.
Think about what happened in that series, and we've had a game 7 in a series. It's like, how do you even say that? Like, come on.
The Toronto-Boston series was good.
I know.
The Predators-Jets series is good.
What?
You say it because you're interested in shock value rather than sensible commentary.
You know what Damien Cox needs? It's like the thing times when everyone used to talk about getting that phone call that Jerome McGinley should have got the phone call from Ray Bork about it's time to cut ties.
Yeah.
Damien Cox needs the call from Al Strachan. It's time now. You can just exist on Twitter like I do and be a general headache to people, but it's time.
Yeah.
The one thing the argument, right, that you make is that there have been way more games decided by more than 2 goals in this playoffs than probably any other.
But that doesn't mean it wasn't a good game.
It doesn't mean it's not good. It means but then people argue about the Winnipeg, Nashville series not being a good series. And all the games, none of the games were really close, right? So they were back and forth each way, which I guess Yeah, I mean that's true. You can say that for sure, but I think that still that doesn't change the fact that going into Game 7 in Winnipeg Nashville was really exciting. I mean, that was a really exciting series, and you felt like that was going to be there. And there were some, of course, some strange things happened in that game. The incredible thing about that game, we haven't really talked about that game, obviously, because of when it happened, but or with Peter at least. But the incredible thing about that, to me, still, was that Winnipeg scouted that was the way to score on Pekka Rinne and knew it. And knew that he ranked 31st in the NHL on bad angle shots.
Yeah,
and on wraparounds, and that's why you knew they were trying wraparounds every chance they had, and they finally got some bad angle shots and scored on them.
Well, I mean, like I said at the very beginning of that game, I think it was right off the opening faceoff. Kyle Connor goes wraparound, and if he doesn't hit the side of the net, it was 1-0 about 20 seconds into the game.
Yeah, they knew exactly what they were going to do with Rinne in that game, and that is something to the scouts. I mean,
check this out. And this is something where I think someone like Hawk should look at, and thanks to this website, TV by the Numbers. So last Saturday's playoff game, and I guess that was San Jose and Vegas, was the leader. Was the leader in its time slot, an 18-49, and had a 0.5 share, which is 1.84 million viewers.
Yeah.
Something like American Idol did beat it for actual viewers, but not for the rating share. And it beat out every other network. And it beat out a boxing match, and it beat out NCIS, and it beat out 48 Hours and Jimmy Kimmel. Why is Jimmy Kimmel on a Saturday?
Yeah,
I don't know.
But that's exactly it. I mean, and if Cox thinks, well, those ratings don't matter, because
it matters.
They matter huge. And this is the stuff, because the NBC deal is coming to an end very soon, that the NHL needs to have happen, because it's going to be super important for the next negotiation and to get other bidders in, because they can say this is making ratings. And you know what? The San Jose series was actually a pretty good series too.
I liked it. I thought it was good.
It was good. San Jose made a real series of it.
They could have gotten blown out.
Yeah, I mean, the first game of the series, people remember that, like the big blowout, but they came right back and won Game 2 after that. So yeah, it was kind of, it's hard to really justify. We haven't seen like the big triple overtime games, I guess, or what people really want to see. But I think that could still come, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that coaches are getting a little smarter. And I felt like in some of these blowouts. In these blowout games, you've seen, them, basically waiting and say, we'll get them next game type feel. You've seen that a lot more in the playoffs than you usually do. You've basically have teams like pulling back and saying, we're not going to score 3 goals in this third period. So it's only game 2. Let's wait and get them next time. You've seen a lot more of that. And I think that is usually not common. So I think that's the argument. But to say these playoffs aren't exciting is crazy. Especially because just the Vegas story in and of itself is exciting.
He didn't say it wasn't exciting. He just said there haven't been any good series.
Yeah, that's really not. I mean, that's kind of that is ridiculous. I mean, and
Winnipeg story, might disagree with me to everybody else on the panel, but it's like whatever.
Yeah, and the Winnipeg story is a great story. I mean, there's so many great stories, and the Stanley Cup final is going to be 2 really fun teams, no matter how you slice it. So I think it's pretty unfair. So I want to move on real quick before we go to talk about this ruling in the Supreme Court today in the U.S. basically surrounding the fact that this has opened the door today for legalized sports gambling pretty much throughout the country, in America.
Oh,
yeah.
Welcome to the rest of the world, guys.
I know. And they basically and so much so that the NHL just came out and made a statement on this.
Yeah, I got it right here.
Yep, I have it too.
Okay, let's see. We will review our current practices and policies and decide whether adjustments are needed, and if so, what those adjustments will look like. It's important to emphasize that the Supreme Court's decision has no immediate impact on the existing league rules related to sports wagering, and particularly wagering involving NHL games. Now, I'm telling you right now, this is a game changer. maybe not as much with the NHL in the United States, because it's clearly the sport, the fourth of the 4 major sports that people know the least about. But I still think it will have an effect. It's going to definitely have an effect on basketball, football, and baseball. But this.
I think you left out one of the biggest sentences, Mike, but I'm going to stop you. But how they started this thing, which was what the NHL came right out and said, which is it said the Supreme Court's decision today paves the way to an entirely different landscape, one which we have not previously operated.
Right. I left that out because of course it does.
No, but for the NHL to admit that is something, because that when a league comes out and says that, you know, this is definitely going to change the way we operate, or potentially could change the way we operate, even though they're saying it's not initially, they are giving themselves the out in the beginning that this could change the way they operate, and that once they evaluate this, they could actually, and I don't know how you actually change the way you operate. And I think the whole rule in the United States, people are going crazy. It's like, it is ridiculous that it's legal in Nevada and nowhere else. I mean, does anyone else realize that is stupid?
Sure.
In this day and age?
You know, I think it has more to do with like younger players who don't make a lot of money and the officials. Look what the NBA went through with the gambling with Terry Donaghy. Yeah. That was a horrible scandal. They don't want any part of that. So that's what I think they're talking about. But here's the downside. I worked in Atlantic City for 5 years in the hotel industry. I saw all kinds of gambling money coming through there. I left that city with, there were probably 25% more hotels then than there are now. This will be just a quick fix down there. The money will never go anywhere past the 2 blocks of Atlantic City. And people are already saying that in Delaware. Delaware's had parlay gambling for over a year in sports betting. It's done nothing for the neighborhoods or anything. People are saying that this is a good day for people who like to bet on sports, and I don't want to begrudge them of that. But the revenue that comes from that has to go to the right place, and so far there's no evidence of that.
Well, I think go ahead.
I was just going to say, so up in Canada, we've had regulated gambling through our provincial lottery commissions for a number of years, and you go across and you have things like Sports Select or Sports Action, and it's based Pro Line, and you're basically picking your sports and you're betting, let's say, on point spread. You know, then they change, then you had to do more than one bet. You had to do 3 teams or something. So you had to be, it wasn't just like someone taking $5 and betting it on the Leafs to win over Tampa in a game. It had to be, it was a little more complex, and then it got into other things too. And it's gone with different sports as well. And those, now in socialist Canada, that's used as into the provincial coffers, and it's most of those companies and the governments that run them designate where that money goes. A lot of it goes to things like health services,
right?
Yeah,
and other things like
in this country,
right? So how this, I mean, the difference I see based on this news, which is huge for you guys, is absolutely massive, is how do they regulate it? And I know regulate is maybe one of the dirtiest words that you can say in the US, but it's a necessary thing with gambling.
It is.
Well, and where all you have to do is go to England and look at how they regulate it and what it does. Well, they've figured it out, and they do a really good job of it.
It may very well be regulated by the state lottery commissions, as you know. I've heard that that's the case. But I think one of the things that the statement that the NHL made, they're going to find a way to profit from this, because obviously you're using the 31 NHL teams as a mechanism to gamble. So they're going to say, okay, well, if it's a mechanism, if it, you know, you're using our teams to bet on, then we better get a piece of the pie. So you can't use us unless we get 10% of the cut.
So they don't own the rights of what you can bet on. I'll love to see that go through the Supreme Court. But to give you an example, in Winnipeg, True North Sports and Entertainment has a deal with the Provincial Lottery Corporation, and there is a shark club set up across from the MTS Center that has a restaurant bar section and a gambling section, and the revenue from those lottery terminals, a percentage goes back to True North and is designated as part of the debt payment on the building and revenue for the building costs, because you wouldn't have them there without the building. So there's part of it that goes through. And remember the original plan for what is it, the Pittsburgh Arena, when they were going to build one with a casino beside it, and everything was going to be paid from the slots. Right? Like, there's a lot of initiatives where this stuff goes back in. But as it sounds like, now it's open game for no one to say you can't gamble on sports.
No, but I think what the NHL will do, I'll give you an example. The NHL could use their SAP stats and have a show about hockey gambling if they want to help show you every week who's hot, who's not. This is what you gamble on.
Handicap.
You also put out a publication that you sign up for and pay for every month. That would do the same.
I'll tell you one thing, Russ. I think you're on the money there. I'll stick to the other stats that are accurate. Not
no, I hear you, but I'm just saying. I'm just giving you an example.
No, I think you're bang on. I think you're bang on there. And why wouldn't the NHL offer the ability to gamble on its own website on games, right? Like that's the ticket. So should the NBA, so should Major League Baseball.
Won't do that. They won't do that.
Well, online gambling that's part of the reason that this is happening is because online gambling already exists in every which way.
Right.
And part of the reason this is happening is people in New Jersey are saying something, just go on the internet and gamble in New Jersey on this game anyway. So why are we, that's definitely. But what's interesting to me about this is when I first started Hockey Buzz and I went up to the NHL and I was talking with a major sports outlet about possibly partnering or selling to them. And when I went to the NHL and I talked to them about it, and because I wanted to get some opinions from people up there that I really trusted on how what they would be okay with. And I asked them specifically about gambling and about advertising, gambling advertising on the website. I said, what do you guys think of that? Because they didn't, at that point, there was no advertising, you wouldn't, this is before DraftKings and stuff like that. So there was no but there were plenty of gambling places. There was no gambling advertising on NHL.com. And there wasn't on Hockey Buzz for a very long time for the same reason, because, they basically were afraid of it. I thought, so I said, you know what, I'm going to take the high road too and just avoid it. And then you get, the money is so much better from gambling advertising than anywhere else. So it's a frustrating thing to sit back and watch other people do it. Mm-hmm. Then when NHL.com started doing it, I just said, well, I guess we're going to do it too, because
absolutely you should.
But they're going to come out with a new list of rules and regulations, because as an example, if you're a player in that league, you're not allowed to gamble. They still don't want them to gamble, but now I have a feeling they're going to make those rules a lot tighter and a lot stricter. And if you get caught, a lot worse for your career, because again, it's like if you play for a team, you're really not supposed to tell a family member, hey, this guy's hurt or I'm hurt, and go bet on the other team. And it's hard to regulate, but they're going to have to figure out a way to make that be the penalties have to be very severe.
Think about it from the official side. We've already had problems in the NBA.
Right.
We've actually had problems in the NHL with coaches, Mr. Tocchet, Mrs. Wayne Gretzky. It exists. And the issue, they're going to have to be, hammered. But here's the other thing you need to do. You need to make sure your officials have no incentive to ever do that. So if you're going to nickel and dime in your next CBA agreement with your officials about stuff, and you're going to grind them down, you're giving incentive, and it's happened everywhere. So don't worry about it. Don't call it gambling incentive. Call it corruption incentive, because you can go anywhere in this world. And when you don't treat the people who are there to enforce things well, pay them well, do them well, corruption breeds itself. Yeah. It happens with police. It happens with all sorts of things. Well, and, that's the biggest concern.
Actually, I will say this. The NHL, I just looked up their salaries. Compared to the NFL, now, of course, it's a lot less games. Yeah. These guys could live the whole year round. The minimum salary is $115,000. After 15 years, you could be making around $220,000. That was back in 2014. So think about that. That's a lot better than the NFL, because a lot of those people are part-time. Well, so I think the NHL has less of a problem than some of the other leagues, Peter.
Well, right? one of the effects that it could conceivably have. Remember, the NFL releases in detail their injury reports to avoid a situation like you were just referencing, Peter, where, hey, he's got a knee injury. Well, the way you avoid that is be completely open, which flies in the face completely of the NHL saying upper body, lower body, or, well, no, during the playoffs, we don't reveal what the injury. Well, no, you're going to have to. If there's a gambling aspect in it, the secrecy avoids the conflict of interest and avoids any kind of suspicious activity. So you're going to have to reveal what's going on with players.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Before we get out of here,
very good point.
To be fair, I just looked it up. This is crazy. We would never have guessed what this Zamboni drivers make about $31,000 a year. If you think about it, that is not bad for part-time work. They're actually really well paid.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. No, it isn't. I mean, for driving the same money around, you're right. Yeah. Okay, and a lot of those guys work, other parts of the
we're not talking about the other lower leagues.
Right. Before we go, my blog I wrote today, real quickly. I've been exploring this for a couple of weeks now, and finally got the go ahead to actually write it from somebody in Montreal that I was talking to. Is that the Montreal Canadiens are exploring the option and the possibility of trading for Jonathan Toews. That the Canadiens have had discussions with the Blackhawks about this, and this is obviously a big trade rumor, and this is something that the Canadiens would like to do. I don't know. I have no idea what would go back the other way. I haven't gotten that at all. We threw something interesting out the other day. You threw it out, Russ, after the show. I think was about the idea of, does Carey Price in Chicago make some sense? And it kind of does. I haven't heard that. That's just us speculating. But I have heard that that Jonathan Toews is definitely a name that is on the Canadiens' radar after the year he had. I guess maybe it's not super surprising. He had an off season. And the Canadiens are desperate for this kind of player, a big time center.
Well, and we were talking about this after the show. Extrapolate further from that when it comes to like a potential deal like that. Corey Crawford is a Montreal native.
Yep.
And if Carey Price is going in a deal for Toews, there's the potential of it being a bigger deal with Crawford and Toews going to Montreal, and Price and something else.
Maybe Galchenyuk or something.
Like Alex Galchenyuk, who is basically on the outs in Montreal. That might honestly, if it was a deal like that, I don't know who the hell is getting the advantage there, because there are question marks with Toews going forward, and there are question marks with Price going forward. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just it is fascinating to me that this is the first big rumor of the summer, and there's a lot. It feels like this is like the tip of the iceberg as to what teams are considering. Now, whether or not this ever gets done, again, this is early rumor phase stuff. Sure. So it's like, a lot of times this doesn't happen, but it gives you an indication as to what teams are thinking about. Right. Where Montreal is thinking right now is big like this. They're thinking big. They're thinking willing to make a big trade like this.
Well, I first of all, I would hope that Montreal would be thinking about center after the completely idiotic idea of moving Jonathan Drouin, who is a winger, to center. It was a complete failure. But one thing I would give more credibility to this rumor on is Mark Bergevin was an assistant general manager in Chicago, and he has a relationship with Stan Bowman. So both teams are, had difficulties, and I think both teams are in the mood right now to shake things up. But Jonathan Toews, I just can't imagine Jonathan Toews in another uniform other than Chicago.
You know what?
About this. We did, and we said at some point, if they were ever going to trade one of those two players, Toews or Kane, it was going to be Toews, because Kane can still score and is still fast. Toews can still play for another 10, 15 years. I'm not saying he can't, but he's never going to be as fast as Patrick Kane. And that's
I would think if Chicago is going to trade Toews, and the return is Price. Let's just play with that idea. And again, just as a reminder to everyone, we're just spitballing here based on some basic information. Yeah. I don't see the value in sending Crawford to Montreal for Chicago, because you're going to have to take some salary back for it, and their biggest problem is salary. So if you take Price back and you get rid of Crawford, you have to. I think your value for yourself is parlaying Crawford someplace else. You may have to do two deals, but not at the same time.
It's possible.
It's just interesting. But here's the thing about Toews. This has got the same trouble as the Shea Weber deal has, in that you've got a player who still has a great reputation, sterling person, no issues with them whatsoever, right? But what's happening on the ice is far away from what's got them that reputation.
Right.
The decline is happening. And sure, you want Jonathan Toews on your. Who doesn't want Jonathan Toews on your team? But you don't want Jonathan Toews at $10 million a year, thinking he's got to be your number one center and produce like a number one, because he's producing closer to like a 2-3.
Right.
And that's the problem here, right?
True. Very true. And that is why this gets now, if you're Montreal, you sit there and say, okay, we still think he has it. It's just, the situation in Chicago, he needs a fresh start. He needs to come someplace else. And I think you do have to get a guy like Crawford back here in Montreal, because if you trade Carey Price, you have nothing else really, goaltending wise, for a little while. I mean, they've got some young goalies, but you're still, if you're making a trade for Taves, you still think you're a playoff potential team. Right. You're not going back to a rebuild.
No.
So,
but they also haven't said that they're rebuilding. So.
And they won't because right. they won't rebuild. They will try to retool it as they go here. That's the impression I get, at least, completely from talking to them.
No, that's the impression I get too. Whether it's right or wrong, that's what it seems like they're doing.
Exactly. All right, time to get out of here, but just something we will talk more about it for sure. And remember, guys, without the buzz is just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. Talk to you soon.